What is up, Steeler fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Hangover. I'm Daniel. Alongside with me, as always, Shannon White. Shannon, how you doing on this weekend or Monday? How was your weekend? I apologize.
Oh, it was good. We had a nice weekend, and we had a beautiful day today, and just looking forward to talking about a whole lot of nothing that's going on in Steeler land right now.
That's for sure true. There's not a whole lot of anything going on. OTAs are around the corner, and the Steelers still don't have an answer for that quarterback position. Mason Rudolph did an interview not too long ago, talked about how he appreciated Pittsburgh and how his time in Tennessee made him appreciate Pittsburgh. In any world, do you see that maybe perhaps the Steelers are just better off with Mason Rudolph?
Oh, I've been on that train for a while now. I would rather see them if they're looking to try to make a trade or something to focus on another position, keep strengthening the roster, and then give Rudolph a chance, see what you got in Will Howard, and maybe pick up one more guy. But it don't have to be a certain person that everybody talks about all the time.
Yeah, I would be excited. I don't think that. So I had my podcast this past weekend, State of the Steelers, that airs out. It's audio only, so if you want to go listen to it, you got to go back and go to the website, steelcurtnetwork.com. And my thoughts were like, all right, what is the difference as far as points go? How many points per game do the Steelers get with Mason Rudolph at the helm? And how many points per game does Aaron Rodgers get you? I'm thinking the difference there's probably 3 points a game. What are your thoughts on there?
Yeah, I would have guessed 3 to 4.
Yeah.
Based over the whole season, probably, that many a game. But again, it's, they really need to develop the running game.
Mm-hmm.
And they need to develop this line. And there's going to be some growing pains as they switch to, I think we'll see a lot more of Johnson in the backfield as the year goes on. And so if you don't have that quarterback that you're going to trust to winging around the field 30, 40 times a game, it's going to force you to focus more on your running game and, to game plan and to execute. So, it's one of them, you've heard addition by subtraction or, something good coming from a bad situation. That could actually happen this year and them actually have a real growth this season, even if they do have a game manager at quarterback.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure you're wanting Aaron Rodgers to do much more than manage the game as well at this age. If you're leaning on him to take over games and you're leaning on him to win some of these games, now I get it. The reason why you bring him in is for those situational football moments where it's fourth down, third down, red zone, those type of things. But if you're leaning on Aaron Rodgers to carry the offense like he did when he was with the Green Bay Packers, I think that's the wrong tree to bark up. So I think that's what you're basically asking for whoever's going to be at the quarterback position this year is that to be a game manager. Arthur Smith's offense has been one that's not really been, put up a lot of points type of thing, especially when I guess maybe there was a time when he was with Tennessee, they put up quite a bit of points, but it wasn't a dynamic offense even then. It was a ground the pound type of offense, throw to one receiver, tight end, and just kind of, beat you up type of offense. I'm completely okay with that, given, if the defense can stay healthy and do their part. I think it can be a successful formula. I don't know if it's a Super Bowl winning formula, but it's definitely a successful one.
Well, I know it's towards the end of last year. I don't follow the Jets, so I didn't pay much attention to them, except when they played the Steelers.
Right.
But I know Rodgers was talking when he was creating a lot of drama there in New York. He was talking about that they were close to exploding and the offense, and he needed to, sling it around the yard a little more and, get the ball to Adams and to Wilson. And I think that, I agree with what you're saying, that you ask him to be a game manager and a guy who can play situational football when you need that big play. but not put too much on him. But I think in his mind, he's still capable of slinging it 40 times a game. And I don't think I don't think he is. But, sometimes what we perceive we can still do, it doesn't mean we can.
Yeah, there's this clip of Aaron Rodgers at some sort of concert, and he's got a water gun. I don't know if you've seen it. The guy looks old, man. I'm not gonna lie. He, especially amongst all those young people, at that concert and things of that nature. I saw him. I was like, man, somebody's dad is there, and somebody needs to tell him that he's at the wrong place because he stood out like a sore thumb at this event. Um, you know, he's up there in age, and if you're gonna lean on him that way, it's gonna spell disaster. I think the Jets try to lean on him, especially after everything that had occurred with their head
Yeah.
coach, their offensive coordinator. They had a lot of turnover last year throughout the season, and a lot of people put on the shoulders of Aaron Rodgers as well as that he had a lot to do with that turnover. But yeah, with all that turnover, it did kind of lean on him more, and he had some injuries, leg injuries, soft tissue type of stuff. At his age, 17 games is a long year. If Mason Rudolph, he's going to start at least a game or two this year, I think, regardless if Aaron Rodgers is a starter. I don't see. I don't think you go full 17 games with Aaron Rodgers at his age.
Well, it's funny. A lot of the things you see Aaron Rodgers doing, he hangs out with a lot of the younger crowds. I think,
Mhm.
he's had like three prominent, famous girlfriends, but I can't even remember if he's ever been married. I don't think he has any kids. I think he considers himself young at heart. So he might not, Ben was married, had multiple kids, you know, carrying the kids around and them jumping on him, and he felt every ache and pain, and Rogers is not like that, and I don't think he views himself as a 40-year-old quarterback. So, but his behavior also screams that he's a child at heart. So, I think I heard somebody squirted maybe Tomlin with a water gun or something.
Really, I didn't see that.
I thought I heard somebody who squirted. They said he squirted Mike with a water gun, and I said, "Well, I figured it was Tomlin."
Well, I don't think I saw Tomlin in this clip. This was a very young person thing. It was like I don't even know. I'm younger than Aaron Rodgers. I don't know who was performing, so I have no idea. But um, at the same time, he's if he's capable, if he can do it. I know somebody saying in the live chat that he played 17 games last year, and I was like, yeah, and I get that. I don't know if the Steelers would do that. Put a 41-year-old guy out there on last week of the year, last 2 weeks, if they don't need to. You know what I'm saying? Like the
Yeah,
Steelers, like last season, if they locked it in and it was just all right, fourth or fifth seat or fifth or sixth seat, you're not playing for a home game. You're probably going to see the backup come in those situations.
yes,
And so I'm thinking that's probably what's going to happen there, if not an injury. But he does have a quick release on the ball. He can get the ball out of his hands fairly quickly. Does he have the weapons around him? We know DK Metcalf, Pat Fryermuth. I think Darnell Washington is probably going to pick up a larger load, but the question still is WR2. There's been some rumors here. I don't know. We haven't really talked about it, but there's been some rumors that the Steelers have been reaching out to several clubs. Most recently, Chris Olave of the Saints, to see if the Saints are interested in parting ways. Does this tell you that the Steelers are uncomfortable with their wide receiver room?
it's like last off season, and they chased guys all off season and never caught one, and they did need more help in the receiver room. So it's probably very similar this year. I mean, Robert Woods, they bring him in, but he's a veteran near the end of his career. He can offer him something as a third down, as a blocker, but he's not your wide receiver too. And honestly, looking at it right now, they don't really have one. Roman Wilson's unproven at best. Calvin Austin is more of your, I don't want to call him just a secret weapon or because I think he can play uh, just, out of the slot or move him around. I think he has talent, but he's not going to be your full time wide receiver too. So I do expect them to try to bring in somebody, but you just don't want to overpay. And I'm afraid to get the quality guy, they're going to have to.
Yeah. Do you think since we haven't gotten that word of who this guy is, do you think that person is currently on another team, meaning it's not a free agent at this time?
I guess they looking at it like the free agents are out there they're longer in the tooth.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they not really worrying about what they see out of them guys, signing them here for OTAs or anything, as long as they get them in before camp. So I think they would rather trade for one and then fall back on the free agent option if they can't pull off a trade before camp.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that in the end, I think that if it was a guy off the street, that the Steelers probably would have gotten that guy already.
Yeah.
I understand before the draft not doing so because it might affect the comp pick formula.
Yep.
But now that that's no longer the situation, OTAs around the corner. If there's somebody on the street that you feel comfortable with, whether it's an Amari Cooper or somebody else, I think Gabe Davis has been spoken about a lot, but I hear he's hurt. He's got some injuries and that he may not be ready to go this year at all. And so, that might be a reason why him at 26 years old is still a free agent, even though he's got some serious talent. It probably has a lot to do with the medical aspect of it. So to me, I'm thinking they probably have their eye on a couple of guys that are on other clubs, that or they probably see higher value with the guys on the other clubs right now, and that they can wait to see if anybody gets dropped. They're probably understanding the situation of a couple of different teams that maybe have 2 or 3 wide receiver twos. You know what I'm saying? That might be willing to do a trade or something like that. I think that's probably the route that they end up going is through the trading route. But we'll see who ends up being out there. I mean, I'm excited to see who they can get across from George, because to me, I mean, even if you look at Roman Wilson, I feel like he's more of a slot receiver than an outside receiver also. I think even in the 10 snaps that he had last year, I think they were all in the slot position too. So I don't know how confident the Steelers are of him being in an outside wide receiver.
No, I agree. I think they view him more long-term slot, and so I'd like to see. There was some teams that took wide receivers this year in the first 3 rounds that I was thinking could be possible targets for the Steelers, and each time I was like, well, they already have 3 or 4 good receivers. Like Green Bay's just covered up with receivers.
Yeah,
and that's the kind of team that you want to just keep an eye. And if one of these rookies is really showing out and they're going to want to probably get him out there on the field, it might make one of them other guys expendable at a reasonable price. So I think that, it's why it's going to take a little longer to see who becomes available.
Yeah, no, most definitely. But with the players that are on the team now, and given Arthur Smith's offense and what he's ran with, wide receiver 2 really doesn't get a lot of attention. So, how much are you going to put into a position that maybe doesn't get that attention?
Well, I think the reason we all feel we want to see him get another receiver is because regardless of who the quarterback is, even though, as you said, Arthur Smith, your number 1 wide receiver, your top tight end, and your running back gets the majority of the, attempts, targets. That wide receiver 2 in Arthur Smith very seldom is very prominent. Now, when the Titans had A.J. Brown, they also had Corey Davis. And Corey Davis was a talented, he had a 1,000-yard season or 2 in there for the Titans. And so he got a little more work than that usually happens in Arthur Smith's offense. So, but you at least want somebody that can draw enough attention that teams can't just, double or triple DK.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, and that's why I was really looking forward to that George Pickens, DK Metcalf on the outside stuff, because I thought it was really going to help out with coverages, running ability, those type of things. It's pretty unfortunate that it didn't go through, but who knows? I mean, with one door closes, another one opens, and we'll see who the Steelers get. And if they end up going into the season with these receivers as planned, what would your outlook be on the season going week one if they have not brought in another receiver? Do you think, man, this is just like last year? You know, what does that do to your optimism on the season if they don't get one?
I don't expect a very explosive offense. I mean, it's not Arthur Smith's style. It's not what I think the plan is. So it really wouldn't. I think it would probably be an offense kind of similar to what we saw last year, and that when Harris had effective games there in the middle of the year, and Warren, he missed a good bit of time injured, and it was a while there. It was Harrison, a journeyman, as the running backs, and you had Pickens and nobody at wide receiver, and so it was frustrating. But I kind of expect an improved rushing attack this year. I expect to see the offensive line gel with people playing in the proper positions and hopefully, fingers crossed, healthy. So I think it can still be a more effective offense this year as far as time of possession and being able to be a little more efficient. But if they don't get another wide receiver too, somebody, with some potential there, I do expect a similar passing attack to last year.
Yeah, I do too. And, I just hope it's more consistent given the fact that I think DK Metcalf is a better wide receiver than George Pickens. I think George Pickens. Yes. I think George can make some excellent catches, and he has ability to go up there and catch the ball like no other. But I think that he takes off too many plays, and I also think that route running effort and all that other stuff does play a huge role. And when you're trusting somebody to be in a certain place so that the other guys on the team can benefit from, the fact that defenses were planning to double cover George like in like the Chiefs game.
Yep.
And he throws an interception there. That to me, and then you find out later that he showed up like 20 minutes before kickoff or something like that for that game too. Yeah. Probably had a lot of reason why he was running the wrong routes. It's just the more we hear, the more it seems like it was just the smartest idea for everybody. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we're going to get more into Pittsburgh Steelers offense and defensive and players they should be bringing in. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. And we're back. Welcome back, everybody, to the show. Before we get back into the conversation, I want to remind you guys of our website, SteelCurtainNetwork.com, your one-stop shop for Pittsburgh Steelers news and coverage. As I mentioned at the top of the show, that I have my audio-only podcast that air out on SteelCurtainNetwork.com on Saturdays around about 11 a.m. Eastern time. So you go check that out. It's called State of the Steelers. You get to get a little bit more of my ideas and thoughts about the team. Also want to remind you guys a little shameless plug. If anybody's interested in tickets to the Steelers games, I have some available. So message me on Twitter or my email, stateofsteelers@gmail.com. That's the best way to get in touch with me. All righty. So with that being said, going back to the offense, Arthur Smith spoke here recently to the media, and he was talking in reference to Caleb Johnson and what he can do. And he kind of alluded to the fact that he feels like he has a running back that can do more. For instance, outside runs, those type of things that they can do more with. I don't think he was necessarily taking a shot at Najee Harris, but Najee was a little bit limited in what you could run with. Do you think that Arthur Smith's offense is going to look completely different now that he has a running back that potentially can open up the playbook for him?
Well, I've took shots at Najee Harris. Um, I'm not saying Arthur Smith was,
Yeah.
but I have, and not anything personal. But the truth is, he was a terrible fit for Arthur Smith's offense. So if you're going to, I don't understand. The Steelers have made a habit of doing this. Is they bring in an offensive line coach whose style doesn't match the talent he has to implement it. You bring in, you've got Najee Harris, you bring in Arthur Smith, and you say, okay, make your offense work. Well, that's not really, it's hard enough to have a successful offense when you have a lot of talent that doesn't fit the offense you're trying to implement. So, I think we'll see a totally different offense. The success of the outside zone should improve drastically because Caleb fits it so much better than Najee ever did. And Caleb is that guy who's patient. When people watch him, he brings back Le'Veon Bell memories for me because he'll just, he goes and he starts slowing down. In the past, when Najee slowed down, it started going lateral, it was over. Because one, he could not accelerate. Once he slowed down, it was over. And he was getting run down from behind by nose tackles, coming down the line of scrimmage. This, Johnson is going to, one, he has much better vision, which was a huge weakness for Harris. So as he flows down the line, he'll anticipate where that hole's going to be, and then he's going to plant and explode. And he will get through these holes. He will not only get to them, he'll get through them. Whereas many times we see Harris realize, well, if I keep going, I'm just going to go out of bounds. So I'm just going to run up the back of one of my own players. And Johnson is much more shifty, more natural runner than Harris. And honestly, Caleb Johnson has a lot more power than people realize. He is not a small running back.
Yeah.
And I think he will break quite a few tackles, even at the NFL level.
I think so too. One of the things also about Caleb is that he's got that home run ability. Le'Veon Bell was patient and he could get some yards, but he wasn't going to break off a 40, 35-yard touchdown plus. He didn't have that home run ability from that distance. Caleb Johnson appears to have that. I think he's been clocked at 22, 23 miles per hour on the football field. So it's not just, running in a straight line in shorts and a shirt. He's carrying the ball and pads and playing football at that speed. That's incredible. So I'm super excited about what he's going to be able to bring to the table. I think he's also going to do wonders for the offensive line. I think the fact that Najee couldn't hit the holes as fast as he probably should have been hitting it is probably going to improve the offensive line. They're probably going to look a lot better. And I think also the quarterback is going to at least give the appearance of the line improvement, because I think I've mentioned a lot of I think I've seen a lot of folks that talk about sports and football in general mention when it comes to a quarterback that they know where the quarterback is going to be, and this is the offensive line. It makes their job so much more easier to protect for that quarterback versus having somebody that's easily moves out of the pocket, runs into trouble, or runs backward, or whatever the case may be. So I think just by having a more pocket worthy quarterback, which I think Mason Rudolph, that's one thing that we saw changing him in 2023 was he was willing to sit in the pocket and he would stay in there. And the happy feet were gone. Some of the things that I think were, that plagued him early on in his career, those things were gone as of 2023. So even with Mason in there, I think that we're going to see an improved offensive line based on the fact that they're going to have a quarterback that's going to be willing to stay in the pocket and a running back that can hit the holes and see the holes when they need to. So it might show an appearance of a much, much improved line, but in reality, I think it might be a line that was dragged down by quarterbacks and a running back who maybe weren't up to par in the previous years.
Oh, I think it'll be both, because both of those are true. the line, and not all it's their fault. I mean, they were being played out of position.
It's true.
They were asked to do things that they were not comfortable with. Listen, I love McCormick. I mean, I thought he really gave a great effort considering he was a rookie from a smaller school that come in and end up starting the majority of the year. And he held his own. And it's funny that people would overlook Dan Moore's struggles, and they were really willing to point out McCormick's struggles. But McCormick was a rookie that got thrown into the fire, and it was never a lack of effort. Sometimes he just, he needed to get stronger. Which, if you look at him, when he was in Pittsburgh here recently, and they were doing some workouts and practice reps, he really looks like he's put on some weight. He looked fitter and stronger, and I think we're gonna see that this year. You don't have to be a speed merchant to be a good outside zone blocker, but you do got to be later on your feet and be able to have lateral movement and slide. And you talk to somebody like Big G, my podcast partner, on Pump Your Brakes. He played offensive line and in college, and he will talk about that. That footwork and that intelligence level to know where you want to go, no angles. Wrestling background always helps. So when I see a big lineman run like a 5'1" or 5'2", I could care less about the 40-yard dash. It's how do they slide in them drills, and can they play over their feet without getting tipsy, and you watch McCormick, he's a very talented young man. So I think this extra work he put in the offseason, I expect him to have a big year.
So you mean to tell me you haven't seen that viral video of Broderick Jones running a 4.2 40? It's fake, by the way. But
oh no, I have not seen it. No.
There's this fake video going around. I think they actually used Calvin Austin's time, and it's funny because you can see Broderick move about 5 yards before the time starts, and then the time starts, and it goes, "Wow, this is the fastest time for an offensive lineman in this draft," and it said 4.2, and I was like, "He didn't run a 4.2," so I rewound it, and I was like, "Man, they didn't even start the timer until it was like 5 yards down the field." And so,
what is the deal now with all the clickbait stuff?
I have no idea.
It'll pop up on my phone, and I look at it, it'll say, Rodgers did this, or the Steelers signed this all-pro wide receiver. And they're talking about Robert Woods, when he was a Pro Bowler, 5-6 years ago. I mean, but it's all this clickbait stuff.
Yeah, dude, it's worse.
So if something really does break, I ain't going to say it because I'm going to think it's more crap.
So you didn't see the one where TJ Watt found a baby on the side of the road and has chosen to pay for that child till he's 18?
No, I'm not saying it. No.
I saw that one. I was like, man, these people. And the clips, there's a picture of TJ holding a baby, but it's super AI. You can tell it looks cartoon. And so funny stuff there, man. But kind of transitioning onto the defensive side, one person that I think, you mentioned Mason McCormick getting bigger and things like that. Have you seen there's a Beanie Bishop? He's got this YouTube channel now, and he's doing this cooking stuff, and he did he baked a cake with Peyton Wilson. Peyton Wilson looked like he gained some weight. He looks he's jacked. I saw him in person. So I went to go see the Steelers play last year. The following day, me and my dad actually missed our flight. And so we had to stay an extra day. And so we went out to Pamela's, and when we were there, Payne Wilson walked by, and then Russell Wilson ended up going with his wife to go eat. I think it was this was after the Ravens game. And I saw Peyton. He looked thin. He looked very thin, especially out of uniform. And in that video, man, the guy looks like he's bulked up a lot. I'm excited to see what that young man's going to do this year. I think he's going to have a huge second year.
Well, they said, excuse me, they said that the Steelers view him as an every down starting inside linebacker. And so I had a feeling he would want to come in stronger and ready for a full season, because last year he ended up playing a good bit, but he split time with, they had Roberts there, and So this year, I think that they're looking at him more as a starter. So I'm excited about that. I love Peyton Wilson. Great athlete. He gives them so much. And he's super smart. So he can handle the green dot. Give him the green dot, take it away from Queen. That experiment's over.
Yeah.
And let Wilson handle it. And but it's funny. Most rookies, if you watch, when they leave at the end of their rookie year, and they always gain muscle because they realize not only is the NFL faster, these are grown men, and you've got to be stronger to compete and to handle the wear and tear of the season.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that Peyton had said, I think it was on the Christian Kuntz podcast, that if something were to have gone, if Patrick Queen would have gone down last year for whatever reason, and I know in that playoff game against the Ravens, he was apparently super sick. He almost didn't play that game. But if Patrick Queen wouldn't have played or whatnot, that it would have been him with the green dot. So to me, they're already preparing him to be the green dot guy. And I agree with you. I think he's an every down inside linebacker. He's got the speed, agility, the awareness, tackling ability. He doesn't miss a lot of tackles. I think that was one of the things that I think I was most disappointed when it came to Patrick Queen last year, was that there was a tremendous amount of missed tackles, especially early on in the season.
Yeah.
I thought he got there, quite a bit. I just thought that, whether he was thinking and not reacting and just, maybe it was too much thought process instead of playing, but he was out of position quite a bit, especially early on in the year. And, if not being the green dot guy helps that out at the very least, and if Peyton Wilson can handle it, that could be huge for this defense. Cole Holcomb's coming back. Apparently he's ready to play. And so he was the green dot guy. Whether it's Cole Holcomb or if it's Peyton Wilson, do you think that Patrick Queen won't be the green dot guy? Do you think they're going to find another way to get somebody else that?
Oh, I think you're probably your four-man rotations, Peyton Wilson, Patrick Queen, Cole Holcomb, Lord willing, he's fully back.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's going to take a little while to knock a rest off, but to where he won't have more issues with the knee. And Bruner has a really good chance of being that fourth guy because he's going to give Mark Robinson everything he can handle for that last spot there. And but yeah, I think that of those guys you want, that'd be so great if Wilson had to go out, or when you give him a breather, you bring in Holcomb. He was your starter, and he was doing excellent until he got hurt.
Yeah.
So, I'm really happy with that group, that quartet of inside linebackers, if that's who it turns out to be. But I just don't want Queen with the green dot.
No, I hear you. When it comes to Mark Robinson, the one thing that Bruner's going to really have to outdo him in is in the special teams. Robinson he has a knack for getting to the ball carrier, especially on special teams as well. And so that's going to be some big shoes to fill for Bruner. I'm excited to see that competition. Oh, I think you froze on me.
Sorry. I don't know. Did I freeze?
No, you're good. You're good. Okay. So I think that'll be good competition. I'm excited for it. There's still some other holes. Harrison, number 4.
Yeah. See, I forgot all about Harrison. Now Harrison played multiple positions in the Ravens defense. So we kind of talked about this when we was making some way too early after the draft on Pump Your Brakes. Yeah. And I said that Harrison can play edge or off ball, but so can Peyton Wilson.
Yeah.
So I think that there's some of the edge guys, let's say Moon, or, they might get pushed off the roster. Robertson as your, backup off ball. These guys could get pushed out this year because they do have better depth.
Yeah. Yeah. Mark brings up a great point that Queen is a great blitzer as well. So he might be a guy that you would not have a problem throwing up, on the on the line there, defensive line to apply some pressure. One of the biggest question marks still is the cornerback position. Now, last week, there was some rumors and speculation going on that Asante Samuel Jr. might be a guy that the Steelers could target. He's a free agent. He had a neck injury. Apparently, he has a checkup coming up in July. He's anticipated to sign with the team if all goes well after that. What do you think if he's able to clear medical? Could he be a guy that could be an asset to this defense? Where would you see him at? Would he be CB1, 2? Where would you see Asante Samuel if he ended up being a Steeler?
I would say CB2. I would really like to see Trice take the next step, but again, it's some guys just have injury, tendencies.
Yeah.
It don't even have to always be serious. It can be soft tissue like last year. And so until he can prove that he can avoid injury, I think it's going to continue to hold him back. And the Steelers cannot truly have, trust him too far. Have too much faith. They're going to have some backup options. So they got Darius Slay, but at his age, I'd rather him, not be counted on for too many snaps each game. So Samuel can maybe come in and be that second starter opposite Porter if he's healthy and the price is right.
Yeah. Yeah. The cornerback position is a big question mark. Beanie Bishop, he's expected to take another year, but Steelers go out and signed Eccles. And, who wins that position in your mind? Who's going to be the starting nickel cornerback?
Well, the only advantage Eccles has, I'm very familiar with Bishop, and I think Bishop will be even better this year. But Eccles is the punt returner, and that's an area that Steelers could be looking for.
Makes sense.
With Calvin Austin, he is so small. Every time he's returning one, I'm like, he might get his head took off. And I think the Steelers are kind of uncomfortable, with a little bit of fumble tendencies on punt returns. So, but no, I think Beanie Bishop will win that, but I think Eccles will be solid depth.
Yeah, I do too. One of the things I think that really maybe plagued Beanie Bishop early on was just trying to get the playbook down and understanding the concepts of the NFL game. When he was on, he was on. I mean, he made a lot of splash last year for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He ended up picking off Aaron Rodgers twice.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
We'll find out if he got that autograph now for sure. If Rodgers ends up signing, but I'm excited about him. I think that if he can get the playbook down, which I think he was starting to get to at the end of the last year, if he can take that next step and the Steelers don't have to maybe keep other players out of position to protect him, like Minka, for instance. There was some speculation and rumors out there that Minka was he couldn't be in his normal position because he had to help Beanie and other young guys that were out there, so that they didn't get burnt too bad through that means. So if he can allow other players to play their position to their fullest like that, and they can trust him, I mean, I think that could do wonders for this team. I'm excited to see what he can do because, he was talking in his baking channel about his accolades there at West Virginia and how well of a cornerback he was. And I'm surprised he ended up going undrafted as well, given, how well he was of a cornerback out there.
Well, I was that year, I wanted him to get Frazier. I was really focusing on Frazier.
Yeah.
But I also wanted him to draft Beanie because I thought Beanie would get drafted, maybe even the 4th round, but definitely by the 5th round. Because, he was an All-American at WVU and first team Big 12. And, I mean, he was the best defensive player on the squad. He was somebody that improved each game. You just seen he has a gift, a knack of being around the football. And he has leadership. And those kind of guys usually get drafted, but not always. And so when he wasn't drafted, I said, Steelers got to get him. And thankfully they did. Because I said how long he'd make the team last year and contribute. And he contributed pretty good.
Yeah, he said that on his podcast. He said that the Steelers were his only 30 visit. They're the only ones that invite him out.
Yeah, yeah.
And so he knew that after it was over, when they called him, he knew where he wanted to go. I'm excited about all these guys. I was listening to Colin Coward, and he had mentioned, they were talking about the Steelers, and he's like a Steelers hater. I swear, he's always talking about how the Steelers are gonna lose, they're gonna stink, they're the whole 9 yards. And he was talking about how he felt that the Steelers took a step back when they went from Kevin Colbert to Omar Khan, and that Omar Khan isn't looked at as a good GM throughout the NFL. According to his sources, the first thought I had was like, who's he talking to? The Chicago Bears? Because I think he's doing pretty good. I don't know about anybody else, but I think he's doing pretty solid.
One of the things, it's funny you brought up the GM.
Yeah.
When the title of the show tonight, we was trying to think, and I said, luck is nice. It's good to have good luck, but it's not a strategy for roster building. And I think if you look back, Kevin Colbert, the picks, a lot of the first round picks, second round picks were misses. But he hit, like TJ Watt, getting him at pick 30 in the first round. Nobody really expected him to become what he is. Obviously, he'd have went much earlier.
Yeah.
So sometimes you just get a little lucky. Some of the best guys acquired in the later years for the Steelers were Mike Hilton, Ramon Foster, these undrafted guys, AB in the sixth round. I mean, it was late draft picks or undrafted guys that just, they seen something in them. And sometimes, when the pressure's off and, a guy will still have that knack of finding a hidden gem, but he's just not as good in that first or second round where he's supposed to pick a starter or an eventual starter. And, we could go to Artie Burns and Jones and Edmonds, and there's a ton of guys. We could, Pickens. Kenny Pickett.
Yeah.
But, all that gets hung on our old GM. Now, I think Omar Khan, I think that the only thing that's held some of his draft that we can't answer for sure is injuries and playing out of position. And maybe we'll have a chance this year to really see his last 3 drafts come to fruition.
To me, I don't think you really can say what a GM is doing at this point of his career.
Yeah.
The first year he didn't even have anything to do with that draft. His first year as a general manager, Kevin Colbert picked that draft. And so it really started the following year. And in my opinion, he's addressed the needs. A lot of people look at the draft as Christmas, as Christmas presents, and everybody wants the shiny toy. Sometimes you need underwear, and those underwear are those big boys up front.
Yep.
And, sometimes you got to get what you need first. And, 2 tackles in the first rounds of his draft, and then a defensive lineman in his last draft. You're building up the trenches, and, you're only going to go as far as your trenches are going to take you. You can have the best quarterback in the world, but if he doesn't have time to throw the ball, what good is he? You can have the best running back, but if he doesn't have an avenue to run through, what good is he? So, I think and also he really hasn't addressed the most important position in the NFL, which is the quarterback position through the draft. Now, maybe he's gotten some flyers and stuff like that on some bridge guys, but that's all they've been. We're just Band-Aids up to this point. Now, next year, a lot of people are anticipating that he's going to draft a quarterback. Now, I don't even know if this quarterback is going to play next year at all. There's a good possibility that they sit the guy for a year before they even play him. And so, to me, you might be looking at the end of the following year to be able to determine how good of a GM Omar Khan has been in his totality of his career to that point. To do it now, I think is it's unfair to him, in my opinion.
Oh, I agree. It's and like I said, there has been extenuating circumstances that have kept us from having a better idea. But the things we can look at and see immediately is an emphasis on production, leadership, character, things that we we're there've been a renewed commitment to getting the Stiller type guys that fit the culture, and I'm very happy with that. And um, even a lot of the guys that have got to play have been held back by honestly a bad offensive system, bad offensive coordinator. I won't name any names, but everybody knows who it is. And some limited defensive strategy. I mean, we've just not seen. Austin has his strengths, but setting up blitz packages and pass rush packages is not his strength. Yeah. And when they lost Butler, and then they had, what's the defensive coordinator for Minnesota?
Flores,
yeah. I mean, they had, that's who was designing all that effective pass rush. And last year they were trying to send 4 guys and it just wasn't working. No. And they really had they didn't have a plan B. So hopefully we're going to see improved coaching and scheme this year as well.
Yeah. Yeah. There's been a lot of reasons why this team has failed down the stretch. Injuries, a lot of things that you mentioned. But you're only going to, you can only do what you can do, right? And you can only build from where you can build. And sometimes you have to, make some losses and take some cuts here and there, and like George Pickens, and other times you got to look past the shiny red toy or the sexy pick of a receiver or running back early on and get that lineman because you need it. Doing the things that you need to make sure that you ensure a successful team. I mean, it's kind of like the Steelers are following the path of what the Eagles did, which isn't the bad path to follow, in my opinion. They just won a Super Bowl. And so, build from the trenches, build a good quality team, character players on the team that put the team first, and you'll go a long way versus trying to convince people who are self-centered into being a team player. And I think that shows when it comes to, like, for instance, the Philadelphia Eagles and their success.
Oh yeah, I mean, and even then, we had last year the Eagles had AJ Brown upset because he got they crushed somebody in the first round of the playoffs, but he'd only got 1 target or 2 targets, and he was reading a book or something on the sidelines, but it wasn't that big a deal. They had a lot of guys that were showing leadership on that squad, and Hurts, he downplayed it. Come out, Brown had a big next game, and it all's forgotten. But they're talented from top to bottom, and guys, won't complain as much if they're not as frustrated due to lack of ability and scheme around them. So Brown, he got over it, whereas a guy like Pickens, you can't blame him for being frustrated, but somewhere along the line you got to lead by example, and that just wasn't going to happen. But no, everybody's frustrated watching the Steelers offense.
Yeah. Everybody gets frustrated watching the Steelers offense. That's for sure. We'll see what happens this year. Hopefully it'll be a different story. Hopefully the Steelers can put some more points on the board. Last question. I know we haven't talked about it, but how many games do you think the Steelers win with or without Aaron Rodgers this year, the way the schedule is?
Well, my prediction on the year, we had a schedule release in the show, and I said 10-7 or 11-6.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm basing the majority of that on Rodgers not being there. Because I think that it will not shock me this year for Mason Rudolph to start a good portion of the season, but then later in the year be an injury, and we see Will Howard. And I think Will Howard's skill set fits what the Steelers would want, like Mason's does, as a game manager who can hit the occasional deep pass, throw
Right.
over the middle, which Mason will do, and I think Howard will do as well. If Rodgers plays and he stays healthy, and the Steelers get another wide receiver too, the Steelers might sneak out an extra game. Let's say they go 12-5. But I just think the losses I give them, I don't know if Rodgers would make that much of a difference in those losses.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I broke down the schedule as well. I gave the Steelers 3 points per game with Rodgers, and without Rodgers, just kind of going through there, I think I put the Steelers winning 11 games. I think there's 6 games that I'm obviously concerned about. I think they're gonna probably split with the Bengals, probably split with the Ravens. I have Seattle as a loss because there's a lot of new parts to it. It's a West Coast team that we don't see very often. New coach, new quarterback. In my opinion, Tomlin's not been the best when he's not been the most prepared. And those variables that early in the season, I think I still think the Steelers could very well win that game. And I think that could be a game like, for instance, the Seattle game, where if Rodgers is playing, that could be a win versus Mason Rudolph. So, I think it's probably 1 game difference as well.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
I think that the value comes in the playoffs. What Rodgers has done. That he's not going to, although he doesn't have nearly the playoff success that I think a lot of people think he does. He's been there. He's won a Super Bowl, although it's been quite a while. I think that those bigger moments, I think he can probably handle those pressure situations, those situational football moments a little bit better, or at least I'd have a little bit more confidence because we haven't seen Mason really do that. He did okay against the Bills. I think that first interception with Deontay Johnson in the corner, I think it was a good throw. I think it was a good decision. The guy just made a play. He turned around and he was able to pick the ball off. And so, maybe if he puts it a little bit more to the outside, or if Deontay Johnson comes back a little bit quicker, maybe it's a different story. But either way, I think that's where the difference comes in is potential playoff positioning. And I'm not saying that Mason couldn't do it. We haven't seen it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, well, do you have any final words for everybody before we call this one a show?
No, like I said, just, we'd all like to hear something so we can either move on from that discussion or, I think that everybody's ready now, the players and everybody. So just keep it tuned. And if the news breaks, it'll break on here. So stay tuned to Steel Curtain Network and Fans First Sports Network, because they'll break it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification bell. I know I've seen a lot of people comment before saying, "Hey, I've rang the notification bell, but I didn't get notified of the live. What's going on?" Well, that's because you didn't like the program. If you hit like, that tells YouTube, hey, they like this program. They want more of it. Even though you have that notification bell ring, there's probably other programs you have ring. They're gonna show you the ones that you like first. So make sure you like, comment, subscribe. You know what to do. Shannon, take us out, my man.